You've probably started strong more times than you can count. New goals, fresh notebooks, bold declarations. This time, I'm sticking to it. And yet, somewhere between day 3 and week 2, it fades. Not because you're weak, not because you lack ambition, but because no one taught you how to stay consistent when the motivation disappears, when progress slows, when the real-life distractions punch through the door uninvited. The truth? Consistency isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters again and again, especially when it's inconvenient, boring, or invisible to others. In this video, we're cutting through the fluff. No hype, no empty mantras. Just the 8 real reasons you can't stay consistent, paired with direct, actionable fixes that actually work. Whether you're building a business, rebuilding your habits, or trying to trust yourself again after years of stopping and starting, this is your reset. This is your moment to build the kind of mental discipline that doesn't rely on mood swings, energy bursts, or external pressure. And if even one part of this hits you in the gut, pause and drop your story in the comments. You're not the only one fighting this battle, but the difference starts when you stop hiding it. Subscribe for more no-nonsense strategies on mindset, focus, and personal accountability, because the future belongs to those who follow through. Let's begin. 1. You chase too many goals at once and end up going nowhere. Be honest, how many unfinished goals are floating in your life right now? That fitness program you started last month but dropped after a week. The side hustle you got excited about for 2 nights straight, then ghosted. The self-discipline routine that looked great on paper until reality hit on Wednesday. The truth is, it's not a lack of effort that's holding you back. It's not laziness. It's fragmentation. You've got drive, you've got potential, but your energy is bleeding in 10 directions, and nothing's getting the full weight of your commitment. That's not a motivation problem. It's a consistency killer. The more directions you stretch yourself, the less depth you give to any of them. Your time becomes thin, your focus dissolves, and even your willpower starts to wobble. You tell yourself you're being productive, but what you're actually doing is scattering your strength across too many fronts. You're halfway in, halfway out, mentally switching between goals like tabs on a browser, and every tab left open is draining your clarity. At the end of each day, you're tired, not because you worked deeply, but because you worked distractedly. And the worst part? That exhaustion gives you the false impression that you're making progress, when in fact, you're just circling the same starting line in fancier shoes. When you chase too many goals, even the smallest obstacle feels like a signal to stop. You're not rooted deeply enough in any single direction to push through resistance. That's why the gym plan collapses at the first missed session. That's why the business idea fades when early results don't arrive fast. That's why your routine feels shaky the moment life throws something slightly inconvenient. Because you're not building momentum, you're just dabbling. You're sampling success like a buffet, hoping one bite will change your life, when what you really need is a full commitment to one consistent meal, served daily, without excuses. The modern world thrives on distraction and novelty, and if you're not careful, you mistake new for better. A new project feels exciting, a new goal gives you a dopamine rush. But the people who actually build something lasting, they know that success doesn't come from chasing sparks. It comes from staying in the fire long enough to forge something solid. And here's the kicker. You don't need more time. You don't need better tools. You don't even need more motivation. You just need to stop splitting your focus and start finishing what you start. Consistency begins with clarity. When you pick one powerful goal, you cut the noise. You eliminate the friction of indecision. You stop wasting energy on questioning what matters and start building a rhythm around it. Suddenly, your time is no longer random. It becomes structured. Your actions align. Your habits begin to compound. That's when progress becomes visible. And more importantly, that's when your confidence begins to rebuild. Because now you're not just thinking about change, you're doing it day in and day out in the same direction. There's a discipline in choosing less. Not because you're giving up, but because you're getting serious. You're no longer chasing the feeling of progress, you're engineering it. And the moment you decide to give one mission your full attention, you begin training your brain to stay focused, to rebuild self-trust, and to develop personal accountability. 3 core traits that are at the heart of any strong identity. This shift doesn't just improve your routine, it rewires your sense of who you are. But to get there, you must be willing to let go. Let go of multitasking as a badge of honor. Let go of the belief that doing more means achieving more. Let go of chasing external validation for how busy or ambitious you appear. Instead, choose one commitment that feels meaningful. Let it be the anchor. Let it shape your day, your priorities, and your discipline. Treat it not as a hobby, but as a non-negotiable contract between who you are and who you're becoming. When you do that, things begin to shift. You start seeing traction where before there was only motion. You stop quitting halfway and begin stacking small wins that build momentum. You protect your energy instead of wasting it. You become less reactive, more deliberate. And the best part? You don't need to tell anyone, because your consistency will speak louder than your goals ever could. If this speaks to you, pause and ask yourself, what is one mission I'm ready to commit to fully? Not next week. Not when I feel more ready. Now. And if you've been there before, stuck in the loop of starting and stopping, share your story in the comments. This isn't about perfection. It's about finally breaking the cycle and doing what works. The difference starts when you stop chasing everything and decide to finish something. 2. You say yes too easily, and your time gets hijacked. Last week, I blocked out 2 hours to finish a task that actually mattered. I was determined, focused. I turned off notifications, brewed a strong cup of coffee, sat down, and then came the neighbor. Just a quick favor. Then a coworker called to vent about something that wasn't even urgent. Later, an old friend texted, "Drinks tonight? Just 1 beer." I said yes to everything. And of course, the project didn't get done. Not because I was lazy, but because I never protected the time I swore I would. That's how most of us lose the battle. Not to big emergencies, but to 1,000 small distractions disguised as harmless interruptions. You don't fall behind because you're irresponsible. You fall behind because you're too accessible. This is the trap nobody talks about. In a world obsessed with hustle and optimization, people assume that the biggest threat to consistency is a lack of energy or planning. But the real danger is that you've trained yourself to say yes out of habit, without checking whether that yes costs you your mission. You say yes to avoid discomfort, yes to avoid guilt, yes to stay polite, and every time you do that, you shrink your own space to grow. You think being agreeable makes you a good person, but too often, it just makes you a person with no time left to build the life you actually want. People aren't hijacking your time maliciously, but the more you say yes by default, the more you become known as the always available one. And that reputation starts working against your consistency. The truth is, self-discipline isn't just about what you do. It's also about what you allow. When you let your schedule be ruled by whoever asks loudest, your most important work gets buried under noise. You end the day mentally tired, but spiritually empty, because you were busy, but not effective. You showed up everywhere, but never really made progress in the place that matters most. This is how energy drain works in disguise. It doesn't always come from toxic people or dramatic chaos. Sometimes it comes from good people with bad timing. Sometimes it's small talk you didn't want, an errand you didn't need to run, a conversation that could have waited. All of it seems harmless in the moment, until you realize your goal has been sitting untouched for 3 days. You don't need more motivation to get things done. You need more emotional boundaries around your priorities. And the way to start is surprisingly simple. Pause. Just pause before you respond. Ask yourself a real question. Is this in alignment with the version of me I'm trying to become? If the answer is no, then let it be no. Not rudely, not harshly, but clearly. You don't owe every request a slot in your calendar. You don't need to over-explain or apologize for protecting your energy. Saying no isn't rejection, it's direction. It's choosing to protect your momentum over pleasing someone in the short term. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, let it. Because the ones who truly respect you will understand. The ones who don't are not your responsibility to manage. There's power in choosing your yes. When you stop reacting and start responding with intention, your time stops leaking into places it doesn't belong. Your day becomes yours again. You feel lighter, not because you're doing less, but because you're doing what actually matters. And when your actions are aligned with your real priorities, you begin to build mental discipline, not just productivity. You become calmer, sharper, focused not just on activity, but on traction. This is how consistency becomes possible, not by working harder, but by protecting the windows where real progress happens. It's not just about time, it's about identity. Because every time you break your plan to please someone else, your brain notices. And slowly, you start believing that your priorities can always wait, that your goals are optional, that your dreams are less urgent than someone else's schedule. That belief quietly chips away at your momentum until one day, you're not even sure what your plan was in the first place. Saying yes too easily doesn't just cost you minutes, it costs you self-trust. And the more you lose that, the harder it becomes to rebuild consistency from the inside out. So take this seriously. Your time isn't neutral, it's an investment. Every yes is a trade-off. And you can't stay consistent if you keep giving away the hours that are supposed to build your future. You don't need to cut everyone off. You just need to cut through the habit of defaulting to yes when your growth requires no. And the more you practice this, even when it's uncomfortable, the more your energy will begin to return. You'll feel it when stacking. The more space you'll have to focus on the one thing that actually moves your life forward. Suppose that idea feels challenging. Good. Growth often starts with learning how to disappoint others, so you can finally stop disappointing yourself. 3. You copy unrealistic routines, and it breaks you. Have you ever tried walking in someone else's boots? They look great in the ad, rugged, clean, broken in, just enough to seem lived in. But the moment you slide your feet inside, something feels wrong. The fit is off, the pressure points dig in, blisters form before you've taken 5 real steps. That's exactly what happens when you try to follow someone else's routine. You think you're borrowing success, but what you're really doing is borrowing discomfort that doesn't belong to you. The problem isn't that you're undisciplined. The problem is that you're trying to live inside a system that wasn't built for your life. You scroll through YouTube or Instagram and see creators waking up at 4:30 a.m., meditating in silence for 45 minutes, drinking green juice, journaling their life vision, cold plunging into discipline, then reading 40 pages before breakfast. You try to imitate it all, maybe even nail it for a day or two. But by day 5, you're exhausted. Not just physically, but mentally. Your mind starts rebelling, your energy crashes, and everything that felt like progress now feels like punishment. You tell yourself you failed, but the truth is that you were trying to build consistency inside someone else's identity. This is how comparison robs you. It makes you forget that your life has a unique structure. Your job, your family, your sleep needs, your stress levels, your mind, they are not generic. They are yours. When you force a high-performance routine built for someone else's world onto your own, you break not because you're weak, but because the structure doesn't hold. You've spent your energy fighting against your own rhythm instead of building within it. And consistency doesn't survive in that kind of misalignment. What no one tells you is that the most powerful routine isn't the flashiest. It's the one you'll actually repeat on a bad day. That's the test. Can you still do it when you're stressed, tired, busy, when your kids are sick? When does work explode? A true routine doesn't collapse under pressure. It flexes, it bends, it gives you anchors, not shackles. And if your routine only works in ideal conditions, it's not a routine. It's a fantasy. The mistake most people make is trying to discipline themselves into someone else's version of success. But discipline isn't about mimicking, it's about designing. You don't build mental discipline by waking up at an arbitrary hour. You build it by showing up at your best hour, again and again, with intention. You don't need to copy a monk's morning ritual if your reality includes 3 kids and a job that starts at 6 a.m. You don't need to do a 90-minute cold shower routine if what you really need is 15 minutes of clarity and peace. The key is to simplify. Strip the noise. Look honestly at your day. Ask, when do I have energy? When am I most alert? Where am I losing time to distractions that bring no value? What would a 30-minute window of real focus look like for me? That's where your structure begins, not in grand gestures, but in honest reflection. And when you find that rhythm, guard it, repeat it, let it become your own. That's how you build something solid, by crafting a consistent foundation, not by copying a trend. This doesn't mean you shouldn't be inspired, but inspiration is a spark. It's not the blueprint. The blueprint is built from your real schedule, your real capacity, and your real pain points. And it's built with tools that actually fit your hands. What fits well, you'll wear daily. What doesn't, you'll discard quickly, and then blame yourself for lacking willpower. But the truth is, you're not broken. Your system is. The most consistent people you know didn't get there by copying. They got there by adjusting. They watched, they learned, but then they applied it in a way that worked with their life, not against it. They built routines that matched their energy. They didn't rely on hype, they relied on self-awareness. And that's the edge you've been missing. Not another routine to follow, but a system that's flexible, sustainable, and rooted in who you actually are. So if you're tired of crashing every time you try to start over, stop trying to fit yourself into someone else's calendar. Build your own. Start small, but stay true. Create space that honors your mind, your time, and your priorities, not theirs. Because real consistency isn't loud, it's not dramatic, it's not perfect. It's quiet, personal, and deeply repeatable. And when you finally stop wearing the wrong boots, you realize the path was always yours to walk. You just needed to stop limping in someone else's size. 4. You keep moving your deadlines and lose self-trust. You told yourself you'd start on Monday, that this time it would be different. You set the date, made the list, even gave yourself a little pep talk. But Monday came and went. So you pushed it to Wednesday. You justified it, just a couple more days, you said, to get in the right headspace. Then Wednesday turned into next week, which quietly became next month. And now, if you're honest, it's been 3 months. The thing you said mattered still sits untouched. You don't need me to call you out. You already feel it. The weight of that postponed promise isn't light. It lingers in your mind, in the background of your day, a quiet tension you can't shake. Because this isn't about the missed task anymore. It's about the erosion of something deeper, your own self-trust. Every time you move a deadline, you tell your mind one thing: my word doesn't count. That may sound small. It may seem harmless. But repeated enough times, it becomes your inner standard. You become someone who plans but doesn't act. Someone who speaks but doesn't follow through. And it doesn't matter how smart your goals sound or how good your intentions are. If your brain no longer believes you'll do what you say, then your identity starts to shift in the wrong direction. Discipline fades, momentum dies, and what's left is not laziness, but doubt. The kind that grows quietly until even your own calendar feels like fiction. Moving deadlines feels safe, it gives you the illusion of control, but in truth, it steals the one thing that gives your actions power: urgency. When there's no pressure to deliver, there's no reason to focus. When your finish line is always negotiable, you never build speed. That's why you drift. That's why your goals stay concepts. Because nothing forces movement, nothing demands action, not even your own schedule. You live in a cycle of planning and postponing, dreaming and deferring. And slowly, your belief in change wears thin. The hard truth is that deadlines aren't about productivity, they're about identity. They're about showing yourself that when you say you'll do something, you mean it. They're the way you rebuild personal accountability, not just manage time. And when you treat them as sacred, non-negotiable, non-movable, non-emotional, you start shifting the conversation inside your head. You stop giving space to excuses like, "I don't feel ready," or "I'll do it when I'm in the zone." You stop delaying and start delivering. Not perfectly, not always with flair, but consistently. And that consistency is what rewires your brain to trust you again. What most people don't realize is that consistency isn't destroyed by failure, it's destroyed by indecision, by constant rescheduling, by the small lie that later is still progress. But it's not. Later is where your goals go to die. Because by the time later comes, you've already built the habit of delaying. And habits, especially the mental ones, build fast. So unless you draw the line and hold it, you'll keep slipping, you'll keep pushing, and your word will keep losing value. So what's the fix? It's not fancy, It's not complicated. You pick a date, and this time, you don't move it. You don't wait to feel ready. You don't ask if conditions are perfect. You don't negotiate with your own discipline. You decide that your deadline is the contract, and when the day comes, you deliver. Even if it's messy, even if it's partial, you follow through not for the result, but for the principle. Because your future doesn't need flawless execution. It needs reliable follow-through. When you do this long enough, something powerful happens. Your brain starts to shift. It begins to treat your deadlines seriously again. You stop second-guessing. You stop over-planning. You move. You finish. You become someone who follows through. And that changes everything. Because the real reward isn't the completed task. It's the identity you rebuild in the process. The self-respect that returns when you prove to yourself, day by day, deadline by deadline, that your word means something again. So the next time you're tempted to move a goal just one more week, pause. Don't ask how you feel. Ask what it would cost your discipline. Ask if the version of you you're trying to become would move the deadline, or meet it, even tired, even uncertain, even imperfect. Because if your future depends on consistency, and it does, then your consistency depends on one thing above all: holding yourself to the date you said matters. Even when no one's watching, even when it's quiet. Especially then, that's when the real shift begins. 5. You waste time you don't track and wonder why you're behind. Man, I just don't have enough time. You've said it. We all have. But then someone pushes back. Really? Walk me through your last 3 hours. That's when it starts to unravel. You pause, you hesitate, you try to recall. Well, I scrolled for a bit, checked a few messages, took a quick call, watched that short clip from a podcast. And right there, you realize the truth. It's not that your schedule is full. It's that your time is leaking through cracks you don't even notice. You're not overworked. You're just underaware. And in that blind spot, your goals quietly fall apart. Most people aren't losing the game because of big, dramatic failures. They're losing because of small, invisible habits that go unchallenged. Minutes stolen by distractions, hours eaten by autopilot. You feel exhausted at the end of the day, not because you built something real, but because your attention was scattered across a dozen meaningless fragments. It's not a time shortage, it's a clarity shortage. And when you don't track your time, your brain convinces you that you've earned rest, even when no real work has been done. Think about it. You wouldn't spend money without checking your balance. You wouldn't train your body without counting your reps. But when it comes to time, the one resource you can never earn back, you spend it carelessly, assuming the damage isn't measurable. That assumption is what's keeping you stuck. Because what you don't measure, you can't master. You keep wondering why your momentum stalls, why your focus evaporates, and why your self-discipline breaks down by noon. The answer isn't out there. It's buried in your unexamined hours. Here's what makes it worse. Modern distractions are engineered to feel productive. You tell yourself that the podcast is educational, that scroll session is for research, that group chat is important for networking. And sure, sometimes they are, but most of the time, they're not. They're just dressed-up dopamine loops. You consume, and when the day ends, you've built nothing. And because you didn't track it, your mind creates the illusion that you were simply too busy. But busy and effective are not the same thing. The fix doesn't require a complicated app or a 10-step system. It starts with brutal honesty. Grab a pen, open your notes app. At the top of each hour, ask yourself one question. Where did my last 60 minutes go? That simple act, just noticing, starts the shift. It interrupts autopilot. It forces awareness. It shines a light on what used to hide in the background. You might be shocked at what you find. You might notice how often you reach for your phone during discomfort. How many minutes get eaten between tasks. How easily your day is hijacked by small silent choices. And as your awareness grows, so does your power. Because now, instead of guessing where your time went, you know. And when you know, you can correct. You can shift patterns. You can rebuild a structure that supports your consistency instead of sabotaging it. This is how mental discipline training starts, not with willpower, but with clarity. Seeing your real behavior and refusing to lie to yourself about what it means. When you track your time, you take responsibility for it. You stop blaming the clock. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop pretending that your lack of results is due to bad luck. You face the fact that discipline without direction is wasted energy, that focus without awareness is temporary, and that daily self-discipline starts with knowing where your energy is actually going, not where you wish it was going. The people who succeed aren't always the most talented or the most inspired. They're the ones who treat time like currency. They invest it, they protect it, they use it on purpose. They're not perfect, but they're present. They don't confuse motion for meaning. They don't confuse busyness with progress. They keep a clear record, not because they're obsessed with control, but because they understand the cost of drifting. And here's the real payoff. When you track your time, you get to see your improvement. You see how distractions shrink. You see how your focus window expands. You see how small tweaks lead to bigger results. And that visible progress builds belief. Suddenly, you're not guessing if you're getting better, you have proof. That proof becomes your momentum. That momentum becomes consistency, and that's how the spiral begins to turn in your favor. So if you feel behind, start here. Not with a new goal, not with more hustle, but with one question asked often: where did my last hour go? The answer may sting at first, but what it gives you in return, clarity, control, and quiet confidence, is worth far more than any excuse. 6. You wait for motivation to feel right and keep delaying your life. You've heard it 100 times. When I feel ready, I'll start. It sounds harmless, logical even, like the right thing to do. Wait until you're in the zone, until the stars align, until you're mentally prepared. But let's be honest, that day rarely comes. And when it does, it doesn't stay. Motivation is fleeting. It's not a bus that stops by when you need it. It's a fire that flickers, light, a feeling that can't be trusted to carry weight. The more you wait for it, the longer you delay the life you say you want. And if you're always waiting to feel it first, all you're doing is decorating the cage of your comfort zone, making it look productive while nothing actually changes. This is where most people get trapped. They confuse energy with commitment. They believe the lie that action should feel good first. But meaningful change doesn't begin with excitement. It begins with emotional self-control, with the choice to move when everything in you says pause. You don't train your mindset by acting only when it's easy. You train it by showing up when it's inconvenient. That's when discipline is born. That's when mental strength is built. And ironically, that's when motivation shows up, not before you act, but because you acted. The truth is, motivation is a side effect of movement. You don't wait for it, you generate it. Like heat from friction, it builds through consistent effort, especially on days you feel disconnected, tired, or off track. The mistake is assuming that a lack of motivation means something is wrong. It doesn't. It just means you're human. But if you've built your habits on the condition of feeling ready, you've built a foundation that cracks the moment discomfort shows up. And discomfort always shows up. So what's the alternative? You chase standards, not sensations. You build a rhythm that survives mood swings. You follow through not because it feels good, but because you said you would. You turn your word into a command, not a suggestion. And in doing so, you stop being reactive and start becoming reliable. Because in the long run, it's not the motivated people who win. It's the consistent ones. The ones who do the work anyway. The ones who move when their emotions whisper "not today" and respond with action instead of an excuse. Every time you skip something because you're not in the mood, you train yourself to obey your feelings. But feelings don't build structure. They drift, they delay, they distract. Your ability to stay consistent depends on your ability to act outside of emotional permission. You don't need to feel like it to do it. You just need to develop personal accountability. A quiet, internal rule that says, "This gets done because I said so." That isn't robotic. That's maturity. What you'll find is this: the first 5 minutes are the hardest. That's the threshold. Once you cross it, something shifts. The mind follows motion. You start to focus, you begin to engage, and suddenly the task that felt impossible becomes manageable. Not because your energy changed, but because your identity did. Because you stopped treating action as optional. Because you replace delay with decision. This shift is what separates dreamers from doers, the ones who drift from plan to plan, hoping the next wave of excitement will last longer. And the ones who lock in, Show up and keep showing up long after the spark is gone. The spark is fun, but it doesn't last. It's your mental discipline training that carries you through the dull days, the tired days, the hard days. And the longer you stay in motion without needing a feeling to push you, the more unstoppable you become. You can wait for inspiration, or you can become the kind of person who doesn't need it. The kind who finishes what they start, who builds not out of hype, but out of principle. That kind of consistency is rare, but it's within reach. And it starts the moment you stop asking how you feel and start asking what needs to be done. That's where the shift begins. That's where standards take over. So don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for the mood to be perfect. The life you want won't arrive with fanfare. It will show up quietly, on the other side of the action you almost didn't take. Let today be the day you stop needing permission. Let today be the day your consistency stops depending on a mood. Because your future isn't waiting for your feelings. It's waiting for your decision. 7. You break promises to yourself daily and lose trust internally. Imagine there's someone you know, let's call him Mike. Every day he tells you, tomorrow I'll be there. You nod, believe him, and adjust your schedule. But the next day comes, and he's nowhere to be found. No call, no explanation, just silence. Then again he promises, next time, for sure. And once more, he doesn't show. After a few rounds of that, something shifts in you. You stop waiting. You stop believing. You stop adjusting your life around his words because deep down you've realized his promises don't carry weight. Now, imagine that Mike is you, and the person you've been breaking promises to isn't a friend or coworker. It's yourself. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, and don't, every time you say, this is the week I finally stick with it, and quit, you're teaching your brain the same lesson, that your own word isn't worth much. This is the silent damage most people never talk about. It's not loud. It doesn't happen in a single moment. But over time, the cracks begin to show. You start setting softer goals. You stop trusting yourself with big commitments. You shrink your vision, not because the dream died, but because the belief that you could stick with it quietly eroded. You think the problem is discipline. But underneath that is something deeper, a broken system of internal trust. And without that, no habit sticks. No consistency lasts. Because if your brain doesn't believe you'll follow through, it won't even try to help you stay on track. This isn't about guilt. This is about clarity. Because the cost of these daily broken promises adds up. They bleed into your energy. They affect how you show up in relationships. They dull your drive. You stop setting deadlines because you don't believe you'll keep them. You stop committing to change because every time you say, this time I'll do it, a voice inside quietly rolls its eyes. That voice isn't cruel. It's conditioned. And the only way to rewrite it is not by thinking harder, but by keeping smaller, truer promises, ones your actions can actually back up. You don't rebuild self-trust with grand gestures. You rebuild it in the moments nobody sees. When you said you'd wake up at 6 and you do, even if no one's watching. When you said you'd spend 30 minutes focused on one thing and you block the noise out and do it, even if the results feel small. This is how personal accountability grows. Not by talking louder, but by quietly becoming someone your own mind can depend on. And that trust compounds. Each time you keep your word, even in a tiny way, it's like laying a brick in the foundation of a new identity, one that doesn't rely on hype or hope, but on consistent proof. That's the difference between motivation and integrity. Motivation gets excited about the idea. Integrity honors the action. And when you lead with integrity, even in the smallest things, you stop needing outside validation. You don't need others to believe in you because you believe in yourself again. That's what real confidence is. It's not the energy of the first day. It's the quiet force that says, if I said I'll do it, I will, no matter what. That's the kind of identity that survives setbacks, distraction, and discouragement. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's solid, and it lasts. To get there, start smaller than you think. If you've broken your word 100 times before, don't try to fix it all in a week. Start with one thing, one action, one promise. Make it real, make it measurable, then do it. Then do it again tomorrow. Let your calendar be your proof, not your mouth. Don't talk about the change, live it. Track it. And when you slip, and you will, don't panic. Don't collapse. Just recommit. Show yourself that this time, the promise won't die in silence. It will be met with action. Over time, the voice in your head starts to shift. It stops doubting. It stops interrupting. It begins to trust. Not because you've become perfect, but because you've become consistent. That's the edge most people never reach. Not because they're lazy, but because they keep over-promising and under-delivering to the one person whose belief they need most, themselves. So the next time you're tempted to say, "I'll start tomorrow," ask instead, "What am I actually willing to do today?" Then do it. Do it even when it's small. Do it especially when no one is there to notice. Because when you stop breaking promises to yourself, you stop needing motivation. You stop overthinking. You stop delaying. You start building quiet confidence that becomes bulletproof. That's how consistency is born. Not through talk, but through trust. And trust, once rebuilt, changes everything. 8. You don't reset fast after failing, and that's what breaks you. You miss one workout. You eat the entire pizza instead of one slice. You binge watch Netflix instead of prepping for the week like you swore you would. And then it begins, the spiral. You start whispering to yourself, "I messed up again. I'll restart Monday. Or maybe next month when I feel better." That voice sounds calm at first, like it's giving you space, giving you time. But what it's really doing is installing a dangerous delay. It wasn't the pizza that broke your progress. It wasn't the missed workout or the lazy day. It was the time you waited to reset that drained the momentum out of you. That's where most people fall apart. Not in the mistake itself, but in the emotional pause that follows. You think the failure means you're not disciplined, but what if the real issue is that you've trained yourself to associate imperfection with collapse? That, unless you do everything right, you do nothing at all? That's the all-or-nothing mindset that ruins people with potential. And if you don't challenge it, you'll keep sabotaging your own rebuild. The truth is, every high-performing person you admire has slipped. The only difference is how quickly they got back on track. They don't wait for motivation. They don't punish themselves with guilt. They don't need a new month or a dramatic wake-up call. They just reset quietly, decisively, immediately. Consistency doesn't mean zero mistakes. It means fewer wasted days. And the only way to make your days count is to stop waiting for the perfect comeback. You don't need a new journal or a new plan. You need a system that expects failure and builds recovery into the routine. Because when your standard is perfection, one slip feels like a collapse. But when your standard is show up again, even your worst day has a lifeline. And that lifeline is built on a decision. No matter how I fall, I rise the next day. Non-negotiable. Let's get brutally honest. What destroys your consistency isn't the external chaos, it's the internal shame. It's how you talk to yourself when things don't go as planned. You go quiet, you disappear from your goals, you ghost your own routines. And all the while, you keep feeding yourself the same lie. I need to feel better first. You don't. You need to act. Action is what clears shame. It's what shakes the dust off and restarts momentum. Feelings can come later, but right now what you need is motion. Forward, no matter how slow. If you want to build unbreakable consistency, build a reset rule. Something so simple, so grounded, that even when your emotions are spiraling, you can hold on to it. For example, if I miss a habit today, I must return tomorrow. No debate. That's your anchor. That's how you stop turning one mistake into 5. Because the delay between your fall and your comeback is the true danger zone. The longer you wait, the louder the self-doubt becomes. The more you analyze what went wrong, the more paralyzed you get. And soon, you're not just dealing with a missed workout, you're dealing with identity erosion. Every time you delay your reset, you give power to the part of you that wants comfort more than growth. That part isn't evil. It just wants safety. But you're not here to play safe. You're here to train your consistency like a muscle. And like any muscle, it doesn't grow when things go perfectly. It grows when you push through resistance. Through the days that don't look impressive, but still move you forward. That's how emotional resilience is built, by shortening the time between your fall and your return. So stop making your slip-ups a story. Stop narrating your guilt like it's a plotline worth repeating. What happened, happened. You're human. Fine. Now what? You either sit in the mud, or you wipe your face and take one step forward. That's the rule. No drama, just movement. Even when your confidence is shaken, even when you feel like a fraud, even when the old voice in your head says, "Here we go again," you respond with action. That's how you turn shame into strength. In the end, consistency isn't a streak. It's a decision to always return. No matter how messy, no matter how late, no matter how tired. The most powerful people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who never let a fall decide who they are. So let today be your reset, not because it's convenient, but because your identity demands it. The faster you return, the less power failure holds. And when failure no longer controls your rhythm, you become unstoppable. Not perfect, not flawless, but consistent. And that's what builds legacies. One reset at a time. Consistency isn't magic. It's not something you're born with or something you wait to feel. It's a skill, a discipline built through quiet, deliberate choices. When you stop chasing perfection and start showing up again after every slip, you stop being controlled by guilt. You regain emotional clarity. You reclaim your time, energy, and identity. Most people break not because they fail, but because they don't know how to reset. They drift in silence, hoping one day they'll feel ready. But that day never comes unless you act first. So today, let this be your shift. Detach from outcomes you can't control. Focus on one mission: protect your energy. Rebuild trust through daily action. The way forward isn't about doing more, it's about doing what matters with discipline. So tell me in the comments, which of these 8 reasons hit hardest for you? And more importantly, what will you do differently starting tomorrow? If this video brought you clarity, helped reframe your mindset, or gave you a practical way to overcome inconsistency, leave a like and subscribe. We'll keep going deeper into how to master your emotions, protect your peace, and train a stoic mindset that actually lasts.